you very much for this masterclass and hearing from diverse experts and diverse nationality and diverse experiences. One thing I want to flag in that before we get in depth, I think I want everyone in the call, especially not the speakers, okay, it's even the speakers, why did you decide to join this masterclass? I think it has to start with the why. Secondly, you just type in for a personal reason. I, for one, maybe I'll start by saying that I wanted to understand where the Afrocentric and the Western approach meet. I cannot understand that if I'm just focusing on the lens of the Afrocentric perspective. So we need to understand the why. And I also wanted to flag in that this understanding trauma is part of the African Survivor Coalition Academy initiative, not only in equipping frontliners, just like you experts, on how to internally immerse yourself to understand what is it that I'm dealing with before I start serving others. It has been clear in our last can I call them interviews and Google research to understand what is the percentage, what is your state when it comes to trauma. It came clear that a lot of our leaders have not accessed it, they've not yet understood it, and we cannot serve others without cleaning our house first. And this is the idea why we are having this conversation. So I can understand most of the things that you might have known them, you might have even heard about them, but we are speaking from a place of authenticity, experience, beyond clinical understanding. And I'm glad to hear from Heather, who has been able to bridge that perspective, working with African survivors, working from Europeans to Americans, and hearing from narrowing down how does it look like in the Afrocentric way. And with now hearing from Lucia, mainly when it comes to Africa, even though it's global, like stigma in Africa is the core barrier to people accessing and understanding trafficking. I just want to flag into having a discussion with you as lived experience, because I think the highest percentage people on call are survivors of human trafficking. How would we interpret it from our first understanding, and how do we carry it over to people we serve every day? So I start with this question. The wounds might be invisible, but they live in our body, the memory and the spirit. To heal, we must name them first. It has been acknowledged by Joy that most of the terminologies do not have a name. But we cannot cure anything, even though it's headache. You cannot get medication or any diagnosis treated if it doesn't have a name. And this is the issue with Africa when we talk about trauma and whatever terminology is around it, it has not been yet named. So there are a bit like 5 elements. I didn't want to repeat myself because some of the information have been shared. That trauma lives in our body, we all agree. When I growing up, I thought that trauma is in my head. That's why we're thinking that it's only, you should be wrong with your head to have trauma, but it's in the body. What sign do we see in survivors and that words may not capture? I'm starting with these questions because this training we are doing, workshop, is kind of a teaser to a real bigger training that you are going to do further, which is going to answer this in depth. Maybe I want to give an opportunity for somebody to answer this question. What sign do we see in survivors that words do not capture? Can I have one volunteer? Anybody? because they gave me 15 minutes. I can't see any hand up. Is that because the question is hard or the way I framed it? Okay. I didn't want to spoon feed you today. I just wanted us to have a conversation, and we are going to continue having this conversation. Yes, Chilean.
Hi, Malaika. We have one response in the chat box. We have someone said courage. And then another person said, could you please ask the question again so that they can answer? Sorry.
So if trauma lives in our body, what signs do we see in survivors that words may not capture? I might give you an example. I was misdiagnosed with trauma because everyone said I'm too calm and too cool. There's no way Malaika should be having trauma. Because my facial and body expression was saying something else. So to answer that question,
we have two answers.
Yes.
Yes. We have
maybe Gillian, you could answer them because I don't see the
Yes, that's sorry. So someone said they look timid.
Yeah.
Two other people said determination and courage.
Okay. We are going to keep those ones in mind. These questions are going to define the next stage of training because we want to make it practical. You know, sometimes we talk about trauma in a more conceptualized, theoretical way, but then Malaika is coming to you, she looks so cool, she has combed her wig and she's just so calm. You said this one is a tick, she's not traumatized. So we want to go in depth to understand real life when you meet these survivors, what will you do? So we're going to keep those answers aside. We're going to answer them at the end. We're going to use them at the end. So another element is memory. So it's the body, it's the memory. How do unspoken or silenced memories shape the way survivors navigate their daily life? Can I have two volunteers? How do unspoken or silenced memories shape the way survivors navigate daily lives, especially from the African perspective? Have you experienced, especially when you're working with survivors, or when you yourself, let me give an example of myself. Instead, they talked about avoidance, they talked about freeze and fright. Our memories capture a lot of trauma events. Some we forget, we choose to forget them, and some we choose to remember. For me, I was using avoidance. Everyone who met me, I'll tell them about my mother because she was one positive element that I wanted to divert myself from unblocking the real trauma. So the reason we're asking about this is for you, when survivors or you're working with victims that are coming into your centers, you're able to embody these two thematic subject matters. What does the body say? In her sentence, when we talk about memory, what is coming up? I'm going to rush through this. Then there is spirit. In African context, healing often includes spirituality. We love going to church, isn't it? So what role can cultural, spiritual practice play in trauma recovery? I think Joy has mentioned that. Any suggestions? Chilean, we have anybody on? Okay.
No, we don't.
No. So which gives me a good feeling. Actually, this was a teaser to see if discourse and writing this, expanding on this is so needed. It seems that it's a gray area. We might understand what trauma it is, but how to apply it when we are faced in real life experience is the major end goal of this training of the academy, translating this knowledge into practice. So I'll just give a small response. I think one of it is just reconnection. Spirit and culture reconnects a person onto their body and their spirit. When it comes to the Afrocentric perspective, it becomes the Trinity. It just brings the person back together. So what does naming trauma look like in the communities where stigma is silenced and mental health is not acknowledged? And collective, how can we create safe spaces where survivors can name these wounds without fear of judgment and re-traumatization? So this question you're going to reflect on, please answer them in the chat. But this is going to be the next phase of this part of my presentation. Just a recap. Trauma and PTSD are entwined. They are kind of serious relatives. We experience them in different ways, as it was already indicated by Heather and Joy. But I just want to flag in one thing, that trauma is the emotional response to an overwhelming event. In some cases, I want to give an example. If it's war, if it's climate change, if loss, or if it's abuse. Why do I bring this back? I had an experience of when I was young. I come from Uganda. In the past, I think 30 years, we were bombarded by continuous wars, I think since the times of 70s. So we would have never gotten a break. When I was young, I'd never known a life that is without war. So you can imagine that your brain and system is just trauma and abuse, and PTSD is just the way of life. But then there were individuals that come from the northern part of Uganda, they're from Gulu. When there was a bit of a balance of the war, it was getting a bit better. People used to talk about those people like they are violent, they are very closed, and they are not very inclusive. You're going to meet these kind of people in your service who are having past trauma, and these people are part of the third generation of the initial wars and how trauma dealt with them. So it's very important for us also to think about the history as it was mentioned. So also understanding, if somebody comes to me, which are kind of these pinpointing terminologies that can make me work, that I can work on. The person is talking about flashback, maybe is avoiding answering this question, numbness. In the recent research, it has been noticed, and also I know for sure that, especially from survivors of human trafficking, in being identified as victim, the process of interview, they mainly express two things. They're either crying a lot and not speaking, or they're numb, which makes them, in the process of being identified as victims, that less survivors are identified at the first 3 months, because most of them either are exhibiting numbness or avoidance. So what does that call us for as people working with them? That we have to really work on this key element and see how we can resolve them. So trauma often is not described in psychological terms when it comes to Africa, as it already indicated. Now, a quick one. So in Africa, we express PTSD in a different ways. For example, In Zimbabwe, I hear if somebody is traumatized, say, man, you are thinking too much. And then that terminology is always there. And then they don't deal with the real problem. Ghana, Nigeria, and across Africa is that trauma is really related to spirit possession. And in Uganda now, we are advancing. We're calling it chronic pain. Rwanda, because of that, after the genocide, that the reconciliation is not only forcing them, requiring them to forgive. Then they have this social withdrawal of their own feelings because they really have to forgive. It also, the government tells them to do so, and the community decided on that element that forgiveness should be a key of dealing with trauma. Then in Nigeria also it talks about it as nightmares and visions. I want 2 suggestions from the team, from the people on the call. How do people express trauma when someone is talking about trauma? Which words do they use? Anybody? In Uganda, we used to call them the mad people.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ross.
Yes, from our side, if somebody's going through trauma, they tell me like you're having some mental challenge.
Oh, mental challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That is very, also across Africa, is really vibrant. Any other suggestion from any other country? That is from Gambia. Any suggestion? Can I hear from Kenya? We've just had a good video from Kenya, and I've seen a lot of Kenyan counterparts on the call. How do we call trauma in Swahili?
Hello,
Okay.
everyone. In
Hi.
Kenya, hello. In Kenya, it's like a mental issue, and we call it in Swahili mwenda wazimu.
Mwendo
I
wazimu.
have gone through. Yes.
So you can imagine how anybody wants to be associated with that. Other terms that are associated with trauma and PTSD is laziness. That person doesn't want to do something. That one person wants to sleep a lot. So we're coming from that background. So why am I bringing this together? I wanted to be as practical as possible in order to understand trauma, the awareness, and also serving those ones who are experiencing it. We need to give it a name. And if in Ghana, it is spirit possession, we need to first address it in that context. One thing that is happening is that once a person comes to you, you say spirit possession. Now that you know about the scientific explanation, you say Holy Ghost fire. There's no way this can happen. Trauma is ABCD. You need to meet the people where they are, try to understand where they their expression of what they're feeling, and then start bringing in the clinical psychological part of serving these people. Do we agree on this? Have we been rushing people when they say I have chronic pain or I'm thinking too much? Then you rush them and say, I don't think you need to talk about thinking too much. You need to talk about trauma, and you need to take either medicine or you need to do these other things. We should acknowledge these terminologies, because in this way, then we can support them from their own awareness. To bring the external awareness, we need to walk their shoes and also try to understand what do they experience in this, if it's nightmare, and then translate nightmares into the scientific understanding. So I can imagine Joy spoke about one of the areas that people are dealing with trauma is prayers, and it has been an essential aspect of Africans dealing with traumatic events. But my question is, what if what we call spiritual attack is really trauma? How could you address it? In practice? Malaika comes to Chilean, say, hi, Chilean. I think for the last 3 years, spiritual attacks are coming. I don't sleep well. Something come and holds my chest. Maybe I'm sleepwalking. The spirit is carrying me, wants to take me to the water. What would be the first statement that you could give the person? Well, Benedict.
Thank you, Malaika. For me, if this is a new person for me, like a person that I'm not used to talking with, I will encourage them to like talk to me about their experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time, as I don't remember who said that, but most of the time we tend to kind of forget, not forget, but block what really happened when we are seeking to have like peace, etc. And sometimes we have these flashbacks, memory is coming back, and unconsciously, as long as we tend it to forget what happened, it's kind of always coming back. And what I've experienced also is like there are different levels of traumas, which sometimes can tend to, you can feel like you are seeing something and you are feeling something while it's all in your head, and you just need someone to talk to give you reassurance. And after understanding that, then you can guide that person to get the proper help. I think that's what I could do for me.
Yeah. You know, every approach is right. And I like the way you brought that you need to think about all possible ways. But I think the first rule of engagement is listening first. Yes, I see.
Yes.
Gandhi. Did I mention your name well?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Malaika. Actually, you said what I wanted to say. I was just like trying to say, first of all, listen the person without just listen. Maybe at a point you hold the hand to give her courage. In so doing, by holding the physical hand, you will then know the pressure or the movement of the touch you're having. You will know the various emotions she's trying or he's trying to carry. He's carrying out when he's narrating the story. So that's what I wanted to say actually. For now, for me, I will just listen first of all.
That is very, very good. And I'm glad to hear something that I myself, I would love to learn more. Please, we'll come back to you to understand, because you say the emotions in the body language. As we said, trauma speaks in the body, and the body remembers and the body communicates. And you were listening to the body and how the movements of the hands and how the movements of the body to direct you, which I think is very essential. I think we're going to get back to you to just kind of understand how we could also bring it to into our training, or in the next training, to bring you to kind of explain that better, because sometimes we think we need to practice. You need to envision a person standing in front of you and do A, B, C, D in practice. That's when you know that sometimes the theory is different from the actual occurrence. Thank you for those tips and the tools. Yes, I see Samsung A1X5F. I think your name was registered as Samsung. Please, could you give your comment?
Yeah, this is Patience Piri.
Oh, Patience Samsung.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't register. Okay. Yeah. In spiritual point of view, trauma can be misunderstood as say lack of faith. You are having all these problems because you don't have faith. You are not a Christian enough, and then it goes further. It triggers you more because it's like.
Can somebody unmute the mic? Okay, thank you, Patience. Continue.
Yes, it's like you were looking for that support, and now this person comes saying that they are still blaming you for lacking of faith. Say you don't have faith, that's why all these stuff are coming to you. So it can like in my context, it can be misunderstood like that.
Okay, thank you for plugging that in. The misunderstanding is misunderstood, and actually most of the time. Yes, I see Chilean, your hand up.
Oh, okay. Just one thing I wanted to touch on is also how we listen, because sometimes we listen with a lot of judgment, coming from our region where we know that there's hardly the belief that what is happening is mental health issues. So your expression while you're listening to the person, how you're reacting to everything the person is saying. I know that there are people who, when they are listening, they have a lot of big expressions like, hey, things like that can actually discourage the person from even continuing the conversation. You actually listen and make sure that you're not expressing anything that would discourage the person from seeking further help.
Thank you for bringing in also the characteristics of listening and with empathy, and also being sensitive that the people talking to us are also watching our body language. But one thing I'm missing in this conversation, but there are real spiritual attacks, because it seems like everyone has come to you is good trauma related. How do we link the difference between trauma and real spiritual attacks? Or spiritual attacks don't exist?
From my side, Malaika,
Yeah.
before answering that, the other way wherein you can help somebody relieve from trauma is like, sometimes they say peer-to-peer connect. So like if you meet me and tell me that you're going through some things, and like for you to feel comfortable sharing your story with me, I can relate my story to you. So that can make us connect. You can know that, okay, this is a safe space for me to talk to. This is somebody that can understand or feel what I am going through, because he or she has already been there. So whatever I say, we can connect with each other. And secondly, for the spiritual attack that you're talking about, there is a way we can differentiate it. Because like for me, I know yes, spiritual attack exists and it's different from trauma, because trauma, sometimes people might come to you telling you, I'm seeing things. It's left with you now to discern, because like based on your conversation, you can know that this person have gone through ABC that relates to what he or she is seeing. So that can make you to know that this is not spiritual attack. This person is going through trauma, because based on their story, their past keep haunting them. It makes it appear to them like nightmare or stuff like that. While spiritual attack now, it can be something relating to, as the name goes, spiritual things, wherein you can just wake up or you can be in your sleep, just see you being chased by masquerade and these other things. So it's two different things that we should try to differentiate and know that when somebody is going through trauma, the likelihood is that if they are not tackled at the early stage, it might lead to some kind of medical complication that will be hard to solve.
Thank you. I like the way we're having this conversation. I use this approach because in order for us to build a comprehensive, survivor-informed and survivor-led Afrocentric trauma-informed care, the wisdom have to come from all of us. So you see how we are able to kind of bring a better framework on how we address trauma, either from a spiritual angle, from a medical angle. But at the end of the day, you need to position yourself that if you're not specialized in mental health, you need to have a referral mechanism that in your place, in your organization, to refer this person. One thing that is lacking in Africa, we identify people with this, either spiritual attacks or either mental health. But then we do not have a mechanism for these people to seek solutions. I think it's one of the most important elements that identification has to come with a solution. So that is able to help this person really get the right help the person needs. We'll dive in this further in the normal training that we are going to do. That is going to be found in Academy. I'm seeing Chilean's hand up. Maybe it just got stuck there.
No, Malaika, sorry.
Okay. So all those components that are brought together, it shows that it's very, very important that we name trauma. We give it a name that is contextual to Liberia, that is contextual to South Africa, that is contextual to Rwanda, so that we can communicate to people in the language that resonates with them. So naming it does not erase the spirituality, or saying naming it, giving it a clinical perspective does not change its spirituality as you intended. You mentioned it just expands the understanding and making somebody get help. So these questions will be answered in the training in Academy. So please don't hesitate to do the follow-up on this workshop. I think I have a few minutes left. I wanted to just give you an example. There is this girl, Ada, from West Africa, was trafficked to North Africa. During the journey, she was abused. After rescue, she's experiencing silence, numbness, chronic stomach pain. Her father was once a political prisoner. Her community sees her as cursed. I just want 2 answers. What trauma symptoms do you notice in Ada's situation? Anybody? Or do you see intergenerational trauma present in Ada's story? Okay. We are going to diagnose this scenario in the next training because of the time. I think it will be better for us to do the things in practice. That's why I brought these scenarios here. Has anybody got any suggestion? What could be the symptoms here? We've had from Heather, we had from Joy, we had from Luthier. We see the word numbness. We see the term chronic stomach pain. The father, there's a political prisoner, making it that she's maybe experiencing intergenerational trauma. So this also makes me make it clear that we need more practical ways on how to understand how this trauma and PST is, how do you say, exposes itself in different situations. So there were, okay, I think I missed So there's Jane, also a domestic worker from Middle East. She has been dreaming of drowning and she has insomnia. Her job is affected, leading to more abuse. 10 years earlier, during the flood in her home country, she lost her young sister. She couldn't save her. These elements are actually typical people who have walked into Footprint Center, and maybe they walked into your services. Do you see an element of PTSD? Maybe Lucia, can you just give one plug-in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can see that she has bad dreams and insomnia, which are two PTSD symptoms.
Okay. Thank you for flagging that in. We'll expand this in our next topic. And this next topic, I just want everyone to get immersed when you're doing this training, because until you put this theory into practice, you're not going to be able to help the people you serve effectively. So in a recap, you can see that the key elements in the conversation or in this story is that there's recurring dreams, there's insomnia, current abuse of from the employer, death of the sister, the 10 years gap, failure to sell the sibling, and the physical location as a trigger. So we would expand this on further in the next training. I just wanted to just recap that trauma refers to emotional response to distressing event, and PTSD develops when symptoms persist long after the traumatic event has happened and disrupting someone's daily and functioning life. So in Jane's situation, it's just, you can see that it's a classic PTSD pattern. Here are some of the takeaway, even drawn from Heather, drawn from Joy, drawn from Lucia, that again, trauma globally, and especially in Africa, is complex. Complex in the way that it's everything that is related to socioeconomic, political, and everything. Everything sometimes is so wrong that a person comes to you with a very ginormous past experience of trauma. We have to consider that. But one thing that is also that I've observed that is often collective or intergenerational, that it makes it very difficult to cry or cry out in a situation where, for example, I grew up in a war zone during that time. You cannot complain when everyone is going through the same thing, and then you'll be the one just whining. So the community is collectively going through this. That's why we need to leverage on collective healing. It's either simultaneously or spiritually and often invisible due to the stigma, as it has indicated. I just want to close by saying that how does this relate to human trafficking? Survivors often have multiple layers of trauma. Most of us end up becoming victims of trafficking with layers that have happened way back when we're young, from either physical, sexual abuse, or either loss of freedom, separation, either a lot of things that can really affect a person's mental health. So bear that in mind. There's a saying that be kind to anybody you see, because you don't know what somebody's going through, because you cannot see it by face value. Trauma may resurface. That's why there should be continuous support. There's no timeline that a person comes to your maybe place of work or NGO looking for support and then say within 1 year you are healed, then you can move on with your life. It should be consistent. Keep on checking on survivors or create that peer-to-peer counseling that could help. And lastly, understanding and contextualizing trauma is essential. One size fits all does not help. So at the end of the day, not all wounds are visible and not all pain is spoken, but it all deserves to be understood. And in this way, we'll be able to to package and support survivors from the place of their mental health, or we begin to support them from the place of their mental health, but on how they holistically might need support from us. Thank you for this opportunity. Back to you, Chilean.